Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to IIBN's Videocast and podcast series. Today, our guest is former Irish international and Leinster player, and now commercial director of Brightwater Recruitment, Gordon Darcy. Gordon, you're very welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
I feel like it'd be wrong to start off our chat today without mentioning your list of accolades and achievements, with 2 Lions tours, a Grand Slam, 2 Six Nations titles, 3 Heineken Cups and Challenge Cup, and also 4 league titles. Is this something that you think about regularly, or is it something that's kind of parked in the back of your brain?
I suppose it's kind of a funny one. I don't really classify myself as a rugby player anymore, funnily enough, that I don't play rugby. But I think when you're playing, you try not to focus on those things, and then when you're finished, you get to probably enjoy them a little bit more. And one of the things we did in our kids' room, which was nice at the time and now is kind of living to regret it, is we put one of the kind of match jerseys and one of the medals on a hook in the room, and kind of, it's one of those things that looks really nice in a photograph, but the reality of it is you have the kids now walking around swinging Heineken Cup medals or a Six Nations Championship medal around the place, and I'm sure they're in the house somewhere, but they're not where I left them.
Yeah. Okay, and can we talk about your journey as well? So just in terms of coming from past player and then progressing, what you studied and then just your career path.
Yeah, well, I probably, it's probably easier. I went professional straight from secondary school, and I was probably one of the first people to do that. So I had to go back to college. Eventually, I did. Went back and I did economics in UCD. Doing a master's in the IMI at the moment in business. While I was playing rugby, I set up 3 businesses, sold 2 of them. Have worked in a number of different areas. Worked in financial services with Investec. I'm with a hedge fund briefly, and worked in a fintech for just under 2 years. And now I'm with Brightwater Recruitment, kind of head of operations there.
Very good. So it sounds like you got some really good experience behind you. What was that transition like from retirement into the corporate or working world?
Well, still happening, because I suppose I'm very lucky that I played professional rugby for almost 20 years, so I kind of still have an awful lot of habits and rituals that don't necessarily translate to the working world, and there's yet to find my habits to form in the working world, so kind of a little bit of a vacuum there. But I think one of probably the biggest challenges is the value you get from work when you're an athlete. You have a very clear defined sense of purpose, and you know exactly how to control the outcomes, even in a very controlled environment. You know how to, you just have experience, and you have you know how to fill your day. When you come into the working world, that's a bit of a challenge. I think the bit as well, I loved playing rugby, and I I'm still in the process of finding what I'm going to do in the next chapter, because, like, I'm going to be working till I'm probably 75, so I want to make sure that I enjoy it as much as I had the privilege of working from in sport. So that is the challenge that I'm going through at the moment, and it's probably one that I spend an awful lot of time thinking about and trying to make as informed decisions as I possibly can along the way.
Okay, and looking back, Gordon, is there anything in particular that you feel like you could have done better, or anything that would make the transition easier for you?
No, I think yes and no. I've taken an awful lot of the experience from professional sport and applied it to my career over the last 5 years, and that has been, if something isn't working, find out why and then make a change, and not be, I'm not scared of, if something isn't working, that I move on. And you know, uh, for various different reasons, the jobs I've left haven't really worked. I worked in an amazing fintech. for nearly 2 years, but it was the job I should have had when I came straight out of school, because the work-life balance was a little bit off. I could have, my kids were getting a little bit older. I was a little bit older as well, and I wasn't able to, working with West Coast clients, and that wasn't there. It was a phenomenal job, but there was just an element of it wasn't right. So I kind of just chopped that and moved on, to the next thing. Again, a brilliant company, phenomenal learning curve, but just you need, I think you have to be selfish, and all those things have to be find a balance. um I think if I was to go back and look in what I did in the probably years leading up to finishing, I was in college, had my degree, I was doing a master's, had all those bits, but I think the work experience, I had quite a narrow view on what the world outside was. I had a job, and I only worked one set of work experience in one company. I think that was probably a mistake, and I probably should have gone wide and varied with the work experience. Worked in hotels, or worked in Google, gone into a lawyer's, gone into a vet's office, see, do I want to go back and do veterinary? Try and get a little bit more experience, and get as much information while you're making that decision. I've always been a fan of, there is no failure if there's a lesson to be learned from it.
Mm.
So every turn, every every journey I've had in recent years, there has been a valuable lesson in it somewhere.
Okay. And is there much support or advice for players making that transition? Is there any encouragement from the clubs for you to go out and experience different lines of work?
Yeah, there is. Obviously, professionalism is still in its infancy in professional rugby, and it's not like soccer, where you won't have to work again. I suppose every person needs a reason to get out of bed, and soccer players should be working, um, and they have the luxury of maybe spending a little bit more time on that. But I think it's going to take a few years for that support level to catch up with what the players actually need. But one of the things that the Irish Rugby Players Association do is we've a very strong post rugby players network, and there's an awful lot of support there, and that does help.
Okay. Okay, very good. So you're commercial director of Brightwater Recruitment, a very strange time for everybody at the moment, but also I can imagine, just talk me through what it's like from at the moment in recruitment.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's a tale of two halves. Up until recently, there was a very large vacuum of information, and a lot of companies forced to close, responsibly closing, doing all the right things, and business needs became secondary. So obviously that meant an awful lot of hiring. The majority of companies were not set up to work remotely. If you're not set up to remotely, you won't be hiring remotely. So what we've seen is we saw a very, very sharp decline in the hiring, like across pretty much ubiquitous across the every industry. And then since that was kind of ground zero, and things have kind of started to improve from that in some areas. IT in some areas around the pharma and biopharma and manufacturing have all kind of gone into overdrive, and they're scrambling to try and pick up the slack. So we're starting to see now since today's the 8th of June, and today's phase two in the opening, and we're seeing a sentiment change, which is really, really powerful in what we're doing, because that a lot of what companies will be doing and planning, a lot of companies now are starting to see an opportunity from this, and that they're well positioned to capitalize and maybe market share, things like that. So a lot of jobs that were on hold 5 days ago are now starting to come back on. And one of the things we like with being in Brightwater is we work for companies. We also work for candidates. So we've been using our time wisely, and we've been reaching out to our quite vast database of candidates and asking them where they are, how they're, where they're doing. Are they on temporary layoffs? Are they not? Are they looking to move? Is this an opportunity for them? And then on the other side, we're sitting in with the companies and saying, how can we solve? What solutions do you need? So, because we have this nice little balance, being able to, some companies just come in and go, I need 10 people, these are the job specs, come back to me. And then other people going, oh, we have a cash flow issue, we don't want to be taking people on, but we might want contractors or temporary workers, and we're able to provide solutions for them and that as well. So it's kind of, in the last week, there's been a big sentiment change, and we're starting to see that. And because we'd have quite a good brand in the workplace, well regarded, for that kind of solutions aspect, people are now starting to pick up the phone to us. So I think this is the start of it. I think there are going to be further challenges down the road. Like, you're looking in the entertainment industry, in the sports industry, big dislocation of employment there. How professional sport comes back into it. Because you're looking at RFU and the English RFU talking about that social distancing. If a 2 meter is maintained, they can only facilitate 9,500 people in the Aviva Stadium. There's huge ramifications to this to come further down the line. And while that's fine for, say, us, the supporter, watching it on television, and then the players playing, there's a huge supply chain in the middle in professional sport that are reliant on those crowds being allowed back at games. And that's across everything. And the same applies to, the entertainment industry, where those people are going to be redeployed and everything. That, there's an awful lot of conversations happening around that.
Just quickly on that, Gordon, are you grateful that you're no longer playing in this environment?
I'd probably say this, depending on what age you are and what stage you are in your career, this is fantastic.
Okay.
Or it's absolute disaster. For the majority of players, so I look at someone like a Gary Ringrose, I look at someone like a Conor Murray, even an Ian Madigan coming back now. This is a phenomenal opportunity for these guys just to give their body a break, to get out, spend a little time, decompress away from the bubble, and actually just feel like a human being for a little bit. Get fit, get healthy. If you're short in confidence, you can draw a line in the sand. You can kind of change the momentum when everything opens back up. But for people, probably for people who are a little bit older in the tooth, it's a little bit harder, because time is not a friend to you at this stage. And in the most, this would be a fantastic opportunity to, just to step back and actually take a break and a breath and a pause.
Yeah. Okay, going back to Brightwater, and just in terms of adapting to the current environment, was there anything you had to do in terms of strategy to pivot quickly, to adapt, with the demand in pharma and tech? Is this something or an area that you'd already been filling, or is it new to you guys?
Yeah, so one of the things is we work across 17 different verticals. So we have, and the tenure in Brightwater is, quite robust. We have the average is about 8 years experience. We have lots of experience in there, and our MD Barbara McGrath has plenty of experience from the last recession. So we were able to, history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. So we were able to put an extra focus on these, and we have weekly meetings with the commercial directors around what ideas they might have and how we pivot into it. But the rocket science bit of it is just down to hard work. And one of the things we benefit from is we have people that have had an experience like this before, and they know they just have to buckle down and get and work through it. And I think what's been good for us is we've responded really, really well to working from home, even though we weren't set up for it. So the working remotely, we've really, really risen to that challenge. So from a support network side, so our IT team and our kind of customer support team, getting the infrastructure out to people so that they could work remotely, and then our teams have all just kind of pulled together, and they've done really, really well. So between the Cork, Dublin, and Belfast office, they've really, I suppose adversity is only, your culture or your team's ability to deal with stuff is only relevant under times of stressful. And we're definitely in a stressful period at the moment, and everybody's pulled together phenomenally well. But listen, it is challenging, and I think one of the things we've been trying to do is to celebrate the little wins as often as possible.
Yeah. And what do you think your biggest learnings are from all this, Gordon?
Yeah, I think they're yet to come out at this stage, because I suppose we're still I suppose we've a sister company, and it's called Mentors, and we've people there who've generations of experience, and they've been through this, probably their fifth or sixth time coming through something like this. And one of them in particular, David Parkinson, is was head of HR in Diageo, and one of the things he's talking about is the looking after. Sorry, you usually end up working in your business at periods like this rather than working on your business, and companies that are thinking, sorry, that aren't thinking 6, 9, 12 months down the line will struggle, because if you're constantly putting out fires on a day-to-day basis, you're not actually seeing what's coming down the tracks. So we're very cognizant of that, and we're trying to think back to what happened before. How did we evolve over 12 months? What came out, so that we're aligning ourselves for that. And in 6 months' time, the world's going to be very different. In 9, 12 months, it's going to be very, very different. That we're positioned to be able to catch the upswing in whatever fashion that takes.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk a bit about Barts Town. I know you've been involved with them for a very long time. Can you tell me about what you do in your role with them?
Yeah, well, I suppose it all just happened very randomly. A friend of mine asked me and said, "Will I do a photo for Barts Town?" And I did. I went down to Kildare, did a photograph for them to help promote. I can't remember what it was. It's probably about 15 or 16 years ago. And the moment I drove through the gate, I fell in love with the place, down in Kildare. I went in and just saw magic happening. And ever since then, I've been an ambassador for Barts Town. I was involved with their 25th year dinner, and constantly helping them to fundraise, because they need every penny they get.
And for people that aren't too familiar with them, can you tell us about what they do?
Yeah, so they support sick children that are going through life-changing illnesses. So we have an outreach camp. So there's a facility down in Kildare which provides, I suppose, camps for basically critically ill children. And yeah, like we call it serious fun. So basically, kids that basically they're only living, they live their illness every day. We have a full medical team down in Barts Town, and they basically can come down and try and help recapture their childhood. So it's almost fully done off of donations. We get very little government support. So continue fundraising. So that's where I've been able to help. And yeah, I've been down seeing it. Like when you're seeing a 10-year-old child who's going through chemotherapy or whatever other various diseases they have, and rather than feeling self-conscious, they feel like they are among peers, and they're not conscious that they have tubes in their chest, or they have no hair, or that they're feeling really, really sick. They actually they just get to forget about it for all too brief a period. So it's one of those places. The way I try to describe it is, it's an absolute crying shame that it does exist, but because it has to, we're absolutely so lucky that it does.
Okay. And if anybody would like to help out or support them, what do you recommend or suggest they do?
Yeah, just like the website is exactly where it is the best place to go, on sparrowstown.org. There's so many things that you want to get involved in, whether it's kids doing a bake sale and raising €2, or somebody wanting to make a corporate donation. We get involved with corporates. We want kids. We want, like, this is it's a family-run charity, and we rely on people who've gone through the camp and they've outgrown their illnesses. They all come back and they want to volunteer. So it's it's a go and have a look, and if you ever get a chance, try to go down.
Yeah, definitely will. So as commercial director of Brightwater, is there anything that you can offer members of IIBN, or anything that they can do for you? Anything in particular that you might need, or service or anything?
Yeah, well, I suppose like what we I suppose pure from a Brightwater's perspective, we solve staffing. We provide staffing solutions. So if there's anybody in the IIBN that needs advice, um, whether that is from their business perspective, is that we have a sister company called Mentors who provide kind of crisis management help with people. They've done all this before. If people like to hear more about that, please reach out. If people are in their own situation and they're looking to move, they want some career advice, please reach out. And companies, if they're looking for good staff, we have we one of the biggest databases in Ireland, and we can again we specialize in solving tough staffing solutions and problems. And then from, I suppose, as an ex rugby player in the network, if there's anything that I can do for people, please, I won't promise I will be able to do it, but please don't be shy in asking.
Very good. And the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, I think the first way would probably be the best through the network, through the IIBN website. If they want to drop me a message in there, I'll be checking that regularly. Alternatively, please connect on LinkedIn or drop me a message through the website,
Great.
Brightwater website. Thank you.
Great. Perfect. Well, look, Gordon, thank you very much. And it was great to chat with you this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Fiona.